On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, my guest is Deirdre Bird, founder and CEO of Dri Umbrellas, a company creating eco-friendly, durable umbrellas made from recycled, ocean-bound plastic. Deirdre's journey started with a broken umbrella and a realization about how much plastic waste ends up in our oceans. Since then, she's built a business that not only repurposes plastic into high-quality products, but also creates fair-wage jobs in communities most affected by pollution. From a successful Kickstarter campaign to partnerships with REI, Deirdre is proving that sustainable innovation can compete with disposable culture. We talk about how she built her company, why upcycling is at the heart of her mission, and what it takes to balance durability, design, and impact. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Today on the show, I am so excited to be joined by Deirdre Bird. Now, she is the founder and CEO of Dri Umbrellas. And you're like, umbrellas? Stephanie, how is that exciting? Oh, wait until you hear this story. Deirdre is an environmental advocate on a mission to fight ocean plastic crisis by transforming ocean-bound plastic into durable, eco-friendly umbrellas. I know, it can be done, and she's going to show us how. She's also an ambassador for the Five Gyres Institute and a member of the Climate City Lobby, dedicating both her personal and professional life to sustainability and environmental justice. And we just did a little pre-chat, and I can already tell you guys we're going to have a great conversation because I am so excited myself just to hear how she turned a simple everyday product into such a powerful tool for change. So with that said, Deirdre, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I am excited too, girl. So once again, you guys have heard me say this on other shows. Deirdre actually reached out to me, and I invite people listening to this podcast, if you think you have a product, service, or something to say that you think would fit in with, our audience, please reach out to me because she did. And she's like, hey, Stephanie, I want to tell you what I'm up to. And as soon as I heard your story, Deirdre, I was like, oh my God, this is so great. Now, admittedly, I live in LA and I only need an umbrella about 5 times a year. But I'm telling you, when I need one, it's an issue. So, and everybody across the country, across the world has this problem at one point where they're like, I need an umbrella. How do I get started? But before there were umbrellas, before there was any kind of, I'm going to change this world, the world with my business, you were already on a mission looking around saying to yourself, I think we have a problem with ocean plastics. And I think we have a problem with waste. So tell me, what was going on in your head that you started into this?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because I have no background really in environmental science or plastic pollution or climate change. I didn't up until I began Dry, but I watched one pretty disturbing documentary, and I like to say it's kind of one of those that really stick with you. You know, a lot of people will watch them and become vegetarians, or everyone has like a documentary they've seen that really shakes them. And the one that I saw was about ocean plastic. Um, and it led down this rabbit hole, which to today, where I am making umbrellas from recycled ocean plastic. But we just have this enormous waste problem on planet Earth, and particularly with single-use plastic. There's a narrative that all plastic is a problem, but a good amount of it is really for human health safety and a lot of medical devices. So it is a really beneficial product in some ways, but when it's misused in the single use case. So a lot of plastic bottles, plastic utensils, things like that. That's really where the big problem comes into play. And as I learned about how much of it was getting into the oceans and impacting our marine life, that's really when I decided I needed to do something about the problem. And I waited for my aha moment, and then I got into it from there.
So what was actually your business then before you even decided you were going to launch your own business? Because like you said, you didn't have a background in any of this. And watching one documentary, why it can be very emotionally moving, it doesn't necessarily lead to, I'm going to start a whole new business. So what were you doing business-wise or just in your personal life that you decided that this was the next step for you?
Yeah, so and I was working for a fitness technology company actually, so entirely separate. But I do have a long history since I was probably about 15 or so of doing a lot of mission trips, volunteering, things like that, across really all social impact sectors. So that type of social impact work has always been very near and dear to me. And so it wasn't so much as starting a business as it was solving this environmental issue and taking on this particular social impact problem. So I decided that this was something I wanted to pursue when I found out about it, regardless of my lack of experience in the business world. I figured it would be a good way to jump into it and see if I could swim a little bit.
Tying it back to the ocean again. I love it. So I know that actually in your family, you've had people that had this entrepreneurial spirit. Specifically, I think I read that your mother. So what was going on in your family that you seem to come from this family that just like, you know what, I see a problem or I want to do something, I'm going to go for it. Because a lot of us grow up in families where our parents simply have an office job or something where you go and you're kind of told what to do. So becoming then the entrepreneur is like a whole different environment.
It is. It is. My parents actually had two jobs while I was growing up. My mom was a school nurse for 25 years. My dad was a bricklayer, also worked for our town. But their entrepreneurial component was that they actually owned a business together. And prior to all the HGTV shows that came out, they would actually buy houses and flip them and sell them or rent them. And so they were ahead of the curve and the trend with that. So my whole childhood, they would do that. And in that sense, that's where the entrepreneurial spirit of, it's fun to have something going on the side as well as pursuing your full-time job.
Oh yeah, and I can already see how that ties in that your parents had already shown you about the value of fixing something that was old into something to be new and valuable again.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point. I guess I hadn't thought about it like that before, but it really is. I think the biggest takeaway was probably the value of hard work and the value of putting time and effort into something and seeing the results of that in your own business. But I totally agree. It's definitely they were upcycling in a way from the start there of just improving on what already existed and making it, a more beautiful, usable product, I guess.
Yeah, and I love that use of the word upcycle. I'm seeing that more and more, especially in marketing. And I think that's so important because we are at a point in our world, in our society, where we have created a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff, right? And then people turn around and say, okay, then I should only use sustainable stuff or I should only use this. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do with the other stuff that's already been created? In fact, I've been on a journey this year when I've been looking around at my living space, deciding what was I actually using, what was I not. And I made it a point of like, I wasn't going to dumpster anything. Everything had to be rehomed, right? And it's been kind of a journey of that is like, how can I upcycle this to someone else to where it was useful to them? And I think that's important for us moving forward, just as a world that it's like, it's not just about throwing away the old to brand new. We have to look at what we have right now and how we can reuse it. And you exactly did that. But tell me, what really inspired you to think of something just so ubiquitous as a product like an umbrella as your vehicle for this environmental change? Because you could have gone anywhere. You saw this documentary, and then how did you leap to umbrella?
I know it is a very random product. I actually get this a lot because people are like, umbrellas, it's such a random choice. Um, and it's really twofold, right? So to your point right now about reuse, when umbrellas break, which they so often do, you can't really reuse them. If a rib snaps or flips inside out in the rain, typically the umbrella is kind of done for and it ends up in the trash or a landfill. So it was one, seeing a product that I knew both the stability and the environmental component of it I could improve upon. And the other was that I really couldn't think of a name brand competitor in the space. So, to your point, very ubiquitous. You can buy umbrellas really anywhere, but I couldn't think of the Nike or the Adidas or the J. Crew of the umbrella industry. So, even though it's a very prevalent consumer product, a lot of people, depending on where you live, right? Not in Arizona, but in Seattle or in Massachusetts, tend to have at least one, two, or three. But I did a lot of R&D in the beginning, a lot of research and development, and everyone I asked, there was no one that knew off the top of their head who made their umbrella. And that to me made it an open business niche. And then another one also that it could just be improved from an environmental standpoint significantly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And umbrellas are one of those things, like you said, you can buy them anywhere. And most of the time, they're made incredibly cheaply that really you only get one or two uses and then they're broken. In fact, living in LA, let me tell you, I have quite a few umbrellas, but you're going to laugh because they're all old, they're all broken, but I use them around my garden. So when I have an area that is getting too much sun as the sun moves, through the seasons, or we move, sorry, the earth is moving, and parts of my garden then need more shade. I'm always picking up old umbrellas, I swear to God, off the street, and I use them in my garden for this exact mission, right? So that's my upcycling on a very
There you
small
go.
scale, right?
That's
Yeah. But
great.
again, you just look at them and they're so cheaply made anyway. It's like there's no way they were going to ever last. So as far as improving that, I think you really hit the nail on the head. But, when you were starting out and you decide, all right, I'm going to totally take charge of the umbrella industry, what was the first step then for you? Did you get right into product development or did you start looking into funding or how did you start getting the ball rolling or opening the umbrella on that idea? Excuse me. How did you start opening the umbrella on that idea?
Yeah, I don't know how people started businesses before Google. I'll be honest. It was a lot of Googling. But I began with how do I get ocean plastic? That was the first search because I wanted to make sure, to me, that's always been the most important part of the business, of the supply chain, has been ensuring that material is authentic, actually having an impact on the problem. So that was my real jumping off point because there are hundreds of umbrella factories, but I really wanted to have my primary focus from the beginning be that this is authentic material having an impact on the problem. So I began there, and then from there, I kind of built the supply chain backwards a little bit, then started approaching umbrella manufacturers after I felt good about the plastic itself.
So, okay, so let's go back to the documentary then. So, when you saw this documentary, about all of this plastic in the ocean, which I'll tell you right now, I've had this conversation recently with at least two people that were naysayers saying that that was all made up, that there isn't that amount of plastic in the ocean. I'm like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Because I'll let you know, I've traveled the world quite a bit. And when I've gone to some, let's say, poorer countries, there's littered with plastic along their coastlines and rivers and stuff. So I'm sure it's out in the ocean as well. So when you saw that documentary, then, like, what was your thought then about there's so much plastic? Did it not feel overwhelming?
It definitely felt overwhelming. And for any naysayers, I would highly suggest looking into or following the ocean cleanup on Instagram, and you will see how much plastic there is just in what's called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So the gyres that you mentioned, I'm part of the Five Gyres Institute. There are five gyres within our oceans. And due to currents and the way basically the flowing of the ocean works, they have become real hotbeds for ocean plastic, deeply, deeply concentrated. So the Ocean Cleanup is an organization out there pulling that plastic from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So if you want confirmation that ocean plastic exists, you can just go ahead and click on their Instagram, and there can't be a reasonable doubt that it's out there. But it was really a challenge from the get-go of how do I go into the ocean and get this plastic? Like, how is it actually going to work? Spent a lot of time in research and development and spoke to a lot of oceanologists, scientists, plastic pollution specialists, anyone that I could get my hands on that was relevant to this problem. Anyone willing to talk to me. So when I spoke to them, they were saying that by the time the plastic gets deep into the ocean, it is decayed past what our modern day recycling system can really handle. So the salt, the sun, the waves really beat it up. And so it's not good quality plastic that can go through our standard system. And they were saying what the primary focus for businesses like mine should be is diverting that plastic from getting into the deep ocean, focusing on rivers, the early ocean beds, coastlines, streams before it really, really gets out there and starts decaying past the point of any sort of upcycling. So that's where we focus our efforts, predominantly in countries, like you said, where plastic pollution is a huge issue on beaches and coastlines. And we work with them to gather it, to bring it to recycling centers where we can turn it into plastic fabric, polyester, and then that can become the canopies for umbrellas.
Yeah, that's amazing. Again, it's like you just taught me something because when you were saying ocean plastic, I was literally thinking there were like nets out in the ocean now that were just dredging this plastic. And you've just, pointed out to me, it's like, no, that plastic you can't even use because now it's so broken down. We have to get it before it gets to that point. So we're all learning something from all of that. But so you have this idea now, and you're like, I think I want to do this. And Google's been your best friend so far, but also we all need funding to get our business ideas off the ground. So you actually launched a Kickstarter. Tell us about the Kickstarter journey.
Yeah, it was quite a journey. It definitely takes more than you think it does. I think a lot of people think they put on their exciting product, write a little bit about it, include some pictures, maybe a video, and then it just takes off from there. But now the platforms are so popular that you really have to drive your own audience there. You need to make sure that you're constantly marketing, and keeping up the momentum for the length of the campaign that you run, which in our case was 30 days. So it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, ultimately very worth it. I was really fortunate to significantly surpass the goal I had set, and use it as a method of pre-orders as well, which I do recommend to product-based businesses if that's how they would like to begin that pre-order process. Because then once the umbrella arrived, I already had my full list of people that not only I wasn't chasing for payments because they had already purchased via the Kickstarter, so it was really seamless of just me receiving them and then the customer receiving them from there.
Right. That's so true. And people ask me all the time about social media and Kickstarter stuff. I'm like, you have to build and nurture your audience. It doesn't just come built in with the platform. And if you're lucky enough to get on a local news program, even, that's great PR, but it generally starts with your friends and family. And is that what you found too? That you needed to start really convincing your family members and your neighbors and stuff like, hey, I'm doing this and it's a good idea?
Yes, absolutely. I had spent about 2 years developing the product, and I know sometimes entrepreneurs don't like to share their ideas with friends and family before they launch their product, but I was very open about it, and so I already had a really great group of friends and family who were in my corner and ready to buy as soon as the Kickstarter went live. So I do think creating awareness beforehand, if you'll be launching via crowdfunding, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it gives you that startup money to even get going because anything you're doing takes money. There's nothing free about starting a business, but you have to have something going, unless you're just going to put everything on a credit card, which some of my guests have literally done that, but that's a personal choice. So, now that you have this idea, and you had already mentioned you started doing some prototypes and figuring out where you were going to get this plastic. Tell me about the prototyping process, like, and the design process, because you weren't an industrial designer, you weren't designing products, although you had worked, you said, in the fitness technology industry. So how did you start then about figuring out how you were going to design this umbrella, or who was designing it, what it looks like, what problems are you solving within it, and like even just what's going to be the look that's going to make people say, "Hey, I want to use that product because it just looks cool."
So when I was designing the umbrellas, I knew I also, in addition to the environmental component, really wanted the durability. So it started to come together a bit when I started piecing together, okay, I want a stainless steel pole because when you're walking around, one of the biggest issues is that things bend or snap. So I wanted everything to be really strong. And I do think in general, typically higher quality products and materials do just kind of naturally look better and In this case, I really wanted them to look chic and fashionable and be an accessory as much as it was an improvement on a typically low quality consumer product. So I wanted to go with ocean themed colors for the canopies. So that's why we have blue and green and gray. And then I wanted there to be a fun sea turtle print. I wanted one to have a print just to see if there was an appetite for that. And that actually has been the best seller, which is really cool. Everyone loves turtles, so that was a good one. But I really wanted them to look fashionable and something that you not super like cartoony or anything like that. I wanted it to look like an accessory that you could use every day if you live in an area with high rainfall. So that's how we chose those colors and the pattern. And we're going to continue to roll out products too in similar colors. So very excited about that.
Yeah, you're right. When you have something that feels luxury and looks luxury, people definitely respond to that. And that's why, some of the, let's just say designer brands, people are so in love with it because it feels, I think, just more tangible, it just feels better in your hands. And you have to do that with a product like an umbrella too, because you're changing people's attitudes on something because your products are not cheap, right? So they can very easily go into a drugstore and buy a $3.99 umbrella and,
Mhm.
the dry umbrellas are quite, a bit more expensive. So there has to be something that they feel is worth that because we can say, well, you know what? It's made from ocean-bound plastic and you're saving the environment. But if it doesn't feel good and look good to them, you're not going to get that sale, right?
Correct, definitely. And I think there's also the component with umbrellas is the frequency in which you have to buy them. So to your point, using them once or twice and then you throw them away, they're definitely a lower price point, but they also, you have to think about the repeat purchase and how many times you're spending that lower amount, equivalent to how many umbrellas you ultimately have to buy. Whereas dry umbrellas come with a lifetime guarantee. And we really focus on the longevity of the product so you won't have to continuously be buying them. Because we also believe no product's really sustainable if you have to be buying it over and over again and it's just going to end up in a landfill. So durability and longevity was a big part of our business.
That is so true. It is so true. It's like it has to be have a certain longevity. Otherwise, it's just like the point is null of what you're trying to do. So tell me then, what were kind of the biggest production hurdles that you've encountered? So you decided you wanted to use this, what we call this ocean-bound plastic. How were you able to then define those suppliers that are going to work within not only what you want it to be, but to be able to supply enough of this material to you for your supply chain and your production process? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it definitely was a long process. There was some trial and error, and especially it being the first product I've ever brought to market or ever created. It was a learning experience. What I ultimately ended up doing was reaching out to an ocean plastic certification company. So they're really the North Star in terms of certifying that the material is authentic and is actually what we want it to be, right? We want the umbrellas to be authentic and to actually be having this positive impact. So I went to them and I asked which fabric suppliers they work with right now, which fabric suppliers they certify. So they introduced me to my fabric mill, and the fabric mill had an existing relationship with an umbrella factory. So I kind of worked backwards a little bit. Instead of finding an umbrella manufacturer, trying to get them to work with a specialty fabric supplier, trying to make sure the fabric was certified, I kind of worked my way backwards into the my supply chain.
Yeah, honestly, that would be so. I mean, now that we have things like, these AI chats that are out there, you could probably have a conversation a little bit easier, but you started this way before them because I'm sitting here thinking I wouldn't even know where to start with this. And I consider myself pretty technically savvy, but I'm like, how would I even start figuring out how to get this material? What kind of manufacturer is going to use it? So, the fact that you even figured all that out before the AI chats, I'm super impressed. Once again, at least that Google was our friend back in those days. I don't know how much more in the future, but that's a different conversation. But so, okay, you've used different materials in this. You have the bamboo handles, you're using stainless steel shaft. What drove your decision to choose those materials as well in the production of this?
Yep, so stainless steel is much more durable. The alternatives in the umbrella manufacturing process were aluminum, which is great in terms of being infinitely recyclable, but is not really strong enough to withstand large storms, and that's led to a lot of the breakage of umbrellas. So I really wanted something very strong, so we went with stainless steel. And for the bamboo handles, that took a long time because I didn't want to utilize more plastic and continue contributing to the issue. I also didn't want to use wood and cut down trees, and it seemed very counterintuitive to solve a plastic problem while contributing to deforestation. So it took me a while, but ultimately landed on bamboo, which is the fastest regenerative growing land plant. So we cut some down for our handles, and then it grows within 3 feet within the next day. So it's very, very fast. It didn't feel like it was having as much of an environmental impact, which was, obviously a huge part in designing these. So we went with bamboo for the handle, and I just love the way it looks. I think to your point, the aesthetic of it, I think umbrellas with bamboo handles really elevate the look. So they're very smooth to the touch, and I think they look pretty chic. So that was the rest of the build out.
It definitely looks chic. Of course, I was all over your website before our conversation, and I mean, it is a really cool umbrella. It's really, really pretty. And I'll let everyone listening know that I can attest to how quickly bamboo does grow because we have a gigantic bamboo patch that was planted next to my apartment building by the previous owners of this single family home that was there. And that bamboo, man, grows so fast, and they're actually in the process now. That single family home has been torn down. They're in the process of redeveloping that area now. They're going to put something else, and they did rip out most of the bamboo that's there, okay, to clear out the area, but that stuff keeps shooting up. Like, you can never get rid of it, and it grows so fast. I keep laughing. I'm like, this bamboo refuses to move. Refuses. He's like, no, I live here now. So I'll be very interested to see when they do develop that property, when the next shoot comes up after it's all said, because I know it's never going away ever. I
Yeah,
live with
bamboo.
bamboo now. It's fine.
Oh.
It's fine. Okay. But let's go back to talking about what you were really trying to do with your business, because you went beyond just, you're going to use this amazing sustainable product, this sustainable material. You're going to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's not stripping the earth more than giving back. But you took it a step further to where you started really looking into making sure that you're supporting fair wage jobs, and specifically in Southeast Asia, and uplifting those local economies. And also I've heard especially empowering women, which of course I support. So tell me a little bit more about what that impact has meant to you, and why that really became so important to you that you're like, I don't just want a business to make money. I want to make sure that I'm supporting these local economies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a really exciting part of Dri for me because I went in with the intention of having an impact on the ocean plastic crisis, really helping address this. And as I like to say, and I did take the phrase from some oceanologists, is turn off the tap on plastic, prevent it from really perpetuating this issue and making it much worse. So that was the primary focus. And then I started realizing that the way that we'll reach this volume of plastic is by going to countries that are most impacted by plastic pollution, like Southeast Asia. And they have entire economies there based off of this type of waste management. So these women, some men, but predominantly women who have lower levels of education, this creates jobs for them that they may otherwise not have, just given the level of education, given their role in society in those countries. So it's really been an incredible component of the supply chain that makes me really proud and excited that, it creates these opportunities for women in countries that may not be as blessed with any opportunities that I have here, for example.
Yes, and one of my favorite sayings is, and I've said it so many times on this podcast, is that old saying that says, a rising tide lifts all boats or all ships, whatever it is. And I believe that. I'm like, yes, like let's keep trying to uplift others, whether it be, women or men included, I'm all for that as well. But let's look at, what we're doing so we're not stripping these local economies just to create a business that makes money somewhere else in the world, because that also in the long term is not going to help anyone. So I really love that you work that into your mission and that you're actively giving back to things like that. Because, like I said in the beginning of the show, you are involved in these different charities that are doing great things now for the ocean. So you mentioned the one that was called, what was it, the Five Gyres?
Five gyres, yep.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is about and then the other one that you're involved with?
Yep. So Five Gyres is really heavily focused on plastic pollution, ocean plastic pollution. So again, the Five Gyres are specific areas within each of our oceans where there's heavy concentrations of plastic. So the founders of that institution actually have had multiple trips. They've sailed out to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which I believe is about 2 weeks via boat off the coast of California. So it's out there. But the patch itself is about the size of Texas. So it is enormous, and there's a lot of research to be done in terms of the plastic concentration out there. And that is a good indicator of how big of a problem it is and how significantly it's increasing over the course of time. So it was founded by actually a couple who go out there regularly and do that. Right now, they're focused heavily on actually what's called microfibers. So, for example, when we wash our clothes, we have plastic fibers because they're made of polyester or nylon that get into water streams just based off of your everyday laundry, things like that. So they have been heavily focused more recently on microfibers, which no one really thinks of it as an issue until you learn that it's an issue. So it's been really great to work with them and stay ahead of these trends, and just be very mindful of other pollutants that you may not consider initially.
Yeah, there's a lot we don't think about. Clothing actually is something we've spoken a lot about on this broadcast, and other entrepreneurs have been tackling that exact problem. Like we're using fabric that actually has these microplastics in it. How do we not use that? How do we find something better? But the other group you're also involved with, you are a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby.
Yes, so Citizens Climate Lobby has been an amazing organization to be part of. Becoming familiar with the ocean plastic, learning about plastic pollution, definitely segued and opened this entire door into the climate change problem, to put it lightly. Climate change is, as you know from the show, just yeah, an overwhelming problem in so many ways. And the way I really learned about it was through plastic pollution, how that's perpetuating climate change. So when I started becoming more and more aware of this problem, I joined the Citizens Climate Lobby, and they go to DC, they meet with legislators, they meet with both state representatives, federal legislation. They really go through kind of it all. They walk through people like myself who are total newbies, and they're really great about just helping amplify the voices of everyday citizens to make sure they're reaching the government officials. So I went to DC with them in July and did some lobbying on Capitol Hill, which was amazing to try to stand up for climate legislation that right now is not getting the type of attention that it deserves.
Well, I hope you brought some of your umbrellas to DC because I will let you know the last time I was in DC was like 2 years ago and it was a torrential downpour. So they could really use the dry umbrellas there.
I should have brought more. I should have done some approaching some retailers down in DC, but they had us back to back on Capitol Hill for quite a few days, so it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, that's funny because as soon as you're like DC, I'm like, girl, boy, did I need an umbrella there, let me tell you. But I'm glad that you just mentioned the retailers and outlets and things like that because you've now been partnered with several really big names like REI. Tell us how you were able to, start partnerships with them.
Yeah, so when I had the Kickstarter, we actually had a feature in the Boston Globe, which is the biggest newspaper in Massachusetts. So that was really nice. And REI reached out after seeing that article in the paper. So they reached out to me, the Fenway location, which was amazing. And I had to reread the email about 16 times because I couldn't believe that REI had reached out. So that was incredible. It was such an exciting day when I got to drop them off at REI and see them displayed in the store, and it was incredible. Um, and REI does this great program where they support small businesses. And typically in the front of their store, they have small business spotlights, and they're based around typically local businesses. So when I found out that, I started reaching out to the Cambridge REI and some other REIs that felt local within the state of Massachusetts, some in New England, and just called and said, I have this product. I'm really looking to fight the ocean plastic crisis. I think giving consumers the opportunity to do the same could really drive sales and excitement around the issue. So, how do you feel? And a good amount of them took me up on it. So, they're in multiple REIs around New England.
Yeah, we like I said in the beginning, like you were very smart just reaching out to us. You had a really great pitch email. For anyone listening out there, please make sure when you're reaching out to any media outlet that you are giving them the story already, in a story form. So we know what you are pitching because you just did it so well. You're like, this is what I've done, this is why I did it, this is what the process has been like. I'm like, great. You told me the whole story in one, paragraph. I understand it. We can now talk about it because that's a powerful pitch email. Like that's really good.
Thank you. It's been quite a journey. We're on year 5 now. So, I just left my job in fitness tech to go full time with it about 2 months ago. So now it's really ramping up, and yeah, it's been really exciting. So I have a co-branding order I'm doing for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So that's my next project for this week.
Oh, how cool. How did that come about?
So I have you ever heard of the music venue Tanglewood by any chance in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So it's right down the street from me, a really pretty renowned venue, and I didn't realize, but they are under the same ownership as the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So I went in to see if they would want dry umbrellas. I could have co-branded for Tanglewood. We have a green one. Green is their color. Seemed to make sense. But they're ending for the season, so they directed me to the buyer of the symphony orchestra who bought, and so I'm co-branding some blue ones for her.
Well, that's so cool. And once again, it was because of your one-to-one outreach. The power of actually connecting with a person, people
I'm
listening
so
to
glad
this.
that it worked.
Yeah, people listening to the show out there, do not be afraid to connect with people one to one. It actually works. So, besides doing stuff like that with your one to one outreach, have you been utilizing things like social media to really get your message out there? Or really, how have you been able to start building that audience so people understand what you're doing and to support the product and where they can even buy it?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot on Instagram. The Instagram account has been up for a few years now. Recently getting into TikTok, still trying to figure out how that really works, but that is what I'm seeing the most popular social media site. So trying to get into that, but also doing a lot of networking in the space as well. Everyone can connect you to a different person, and things expand from there, which has been great. So, really getting the word out through networking, through being part of those organizations, and social media driving the sales, and of course, developing an email list and things like that to make sure you're in regular communication with the customers.
Yeah, and when you're talking to the customers, because you have a lot of really important messaging in this, really, like we say, the whys, a lot of whys behind this. How do you balance between, talking about this really cool product that you want them to buy and then weaving in the whole story of why they should really support the brand because of this mission without it becoming too preachy? Because, sometimes we feel like we're a little inundated with the greenwashing and the sustainability messaging, and it can really, I think take a lot of the buzz away from brands like yourself that are really doing something important. So how do you balance all that between I'm telling you this story, but I also want you to buy this product, and this is why it's important to not only you but the world?
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting in front of the right audience. And when you tell, I found when I tell the sustainability story first, like when I was reaching out to you, and I start with that, people like yourself and like other conscious consumers, that makes them want to partake in the business and engage with it. So it's not necessarily a sales pitch to people who are in the environmental space. It's more you tell the story and that develops the intrigue in it, or at least that's what I've found. Um, for retailers and people who maybe aren't as passionate about consuming consciously and making eco-friendly purchases, it is a lot more leaning into the durability of it, the longevity of the product, why it's superior over other choices they could be making in the rain gear space. So it does depend on who you're kind of telling the story to, but I have found definitely for conscious consumers, you just tell the story, and from there you do get the buy-in a lot of time.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful product. Like I want everyone to go look at it. So if you haven't already jumped over to the website, where can they find you guys online?
So our website is www.dri.earth. So we're Dry Umbrellas, and I have to tell you, it was really exciting to come up with the name, the DRI, spelling it that way instead of dry with a Y, because I wanted to do the a raindrop above the I. So we spelled it a little differently, but I always need to clarify that it's dry, DRI, and dot earth for the website.
Wow, that's so cool. I didn't even realize that, but I do love that very clever use of the raindrop over the eye. I love it for marketing. I love it for branding, and I love it just because it's cute as well. So, I'm a fan. I think they're just so beautiful to look at. Like I said, when you reached out to me, I immediately went to your website. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. This is an umbrella that I would totally use. And by the way, I will not be putting in a dry umbrella in my garden. First of all, I won't have to because it'll last longer. But secondly, I will use it when I travel, and then when I also have my 5 rain days. I say there's 5 rain days a year in LA, but we actually get a bit more. It just happens kind of all at once, and then we're done. So, with that said, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. It was so fun to talk to you, Deirdre. I love it. I love your creative idea. I love where you came to it from. And I love to meet people like you that are just come up with these ideas, and you're like, I'll figure out how to do that, even though I have no background in marketing of packaged goods or whatever. So good for you, girl. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate you having me on, and I just love how you're spotlighting businesses that are doing work in the sustainability space and changing the world for the better. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.